From an alternate beginning to episode 3 to A New Hope possibly being in all Japanese, we look at 50 awesome facts on Star Wars. Fact 1. George Lucas was inspired by many things when he began crafting Star Wars. Fairy tales, westerns, and 1930s sci-fi serials all helped influence the mega hit, but Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, was arguably the biggest inspiration. In his Book of Theories, Campbell points out that myths passed down generations share a basic structure. He follows on by saying, "A hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are there encountered, and a decisive victory is won. The hero comes back from this mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons on his fellow man." Lucas simply implemented these ideas into his story, with Luke as the main hero. Fact 2. Akira Kurosawa's 1958 film, The Hidden Fortress, helped Lucas tell his massive space opera on a personable and relatable scale. The film tells the story of a roguish general protecting a beautiful princess from an evil clan behind enemy lines. Lucas said, "The one thing I was really intrigued by was the fact that the story was told from the two lowest characters. I decided that would be a nice way to tell the Star Wars story. Take the two lowliest characters, as Kurosawa did, and tell the story from their point of view, which in the Star Wars case is the two droids, and that was the strongest influence. The fact that there was a princess trying to get through enemy lines was more of a coincidence than anything else." Fact 3. There is another link to Japanese films, like those of Kurosawa's. The word Jedi allegedly derives from the Japanese word Jedi-jeki, meaning period dramas. Fact 4. Furthermore, early in the film's production, George Lucas considered doing the entire film in Japanese with English subtitles. Fact 5. The opening crawl was taken from the Flash Gordon serials. It was created practically by placing 2-foot wide die-cut yellow letters over a 6-foot long black paper background. Then a camera made a slow pass over the text, so slow in fact that it took 3 hours to film. Fact 6. Orson Welles was George Lucas's original first choice for the voice of Vader. However, he decided to look elsewhere when he thought Welles's famous voice would be too recognisable. Fact 7. The man who was under Vader's suit, David Prowse, was picked by Lucas purely because of his huge height. With his 6'5" nature, he was either going to be Chewbacca or Vader, but turned down the Wookiee, saying he didn't want to be inside a hot monkey suit throughout filming. Fact 8. Prowse was very angry when he found out his voice would not be used for Vader. When James Earl Jones got the part, Prowse claimed it was reverse racism, since there were no other prominent black actors in the film. Fact 9. Jabba the Hutt was originally not imagined as a big fat slug, rather a fuzzy creature. Fact 10. The Jabba puppet was somewhat inspired by the stout British actor Sidney Greenstreet. What an insult that is. That is definitely not a compliment. Imagine being called that. Mate, you're so fat, you inspired Jabba the Hutt. Fact 11. The official lore name for the genre of music heard during the cantina scene is jizz. Nothing funny about that, of course. Fact 12. IG-88, the bounty hunter droid, was actually made from reused props. A drink dispenser from the cantina scene is used for his head. Fact 13. From my previous Star Wars Facts series, you may be aware that Yoda originally had the first name Minch, but what you may not be aware of is that before that, his first name was going to be Buffy. Let's just thank Lucas for scrapping both names. Fact 14. The first day of shooting took place in Tunisia, which was to film Tatooine scenes. With it being a desert, you'd expect it to be, I don't know, sunny and dry. Definitely no worries about the weather, right? Wrong. The country experienced its first major rainstorm in 50 years, meaning shooting was delayed by a day. Fact 15. We're not done with Tunisia. The Libyan government became concerned about what they thought was a huge military vehicle near its border. What was the apparent huge military vehicle? It was a sandcrawler. The Tunisian government asked the crew to move it after threats of military mobilization from Libya. Fact 16. Speaking of Luke Skywalker's home, it wasn't always going to be in a desert environment. Originally, his homeworld was going to be filled with dense jungles. This even led producer Gary Kurtz to scouting locations for filming in the Philippines. However, the thought of spending months shooting in a jungle did not excite Lucas. Fact 17. A very early draft of the Star Wars saga began with, this is the story of Mace Windu, a revered Jedi, Bendu of Apuche, who was related to Usbi CJ Fape, a Padawan learner of famed Jedi. I have no idea what that means, but what I do know is that it wasn't until episode 1 where Mace Windu and Padawans showed up. Fact 18. Even though A New Hope was a massive success, the film studio tried to undermine Lucas wherever possible. This forced Lucas to fund The Empire Strikes Back himself, which was unheard of in blockbuster filmmaking. This gave Lucas full creative control while still having a major movie studio to distribute the movie once complete. However, the entertainment branch of the Bank of America, which loaned Lucas money to cover the project, pulled out when the film reached $10 million over the original estimate. This forced Lucas to ask for help from 20th Century Fox. This made him give up certain rights to the movie. He was so unhappy with Fox's approach to the deal that he went to rival studio Paramount with another project of his. What was that project, I hear you ask? Raiders of the Lost Ark. Fact 19. Episode 5 uses the most stop-motion animation out of all the saga's films. Fact 20. Speaking of stop-motion, it took an entire day to shoot only 5 seconds of AT-AT footage. Fact 21. Many of the extras in the battle scenes on Hoth were actually local mountain rescue skiers. Fact 22. We're not done with Hoth yet. Only seconds before Mark Hamill entered the Bacta tank, a light shattered on set which forced sharp glass into the water. If Hamill had been in the tank, he could well have been killed. You could say it was a lucky escape. Fact 23. As we all know, the Yoda puppet was very lifelike, especially for the time. So lifelike in fact that Irvin Kershner, the director, often gave it instructions rather than Frank Oz, the actual puppeteer. Interestingly, Oz only got the gig when first choice puppeteer Jim Henson turned the role down and recommended Frank. It turned out to be a good choice as Lucas loved his performance, so much so that he lobbied for him to receive an Oscar. Sadly, he never did. Fact 24. Both Mark Hamill's and Carrie Fisher's contracts for episode 5 not only included terms for the film and the next in the series, but also for another movie out with the original trilogy. Fact 25. Speaking of contracts, Harrison Ford wasn't entirely sure if he wanted to be in Return of the Jedi, and so never committed to a contract. This was why Han Solo was frozen in carbonite. This allowed him to be easily killed off in the series in the event he didn't come back for episode 6. Ultimately, of course, he decided to stick around and so was kept alive. Fact 26. In episode 6, the Jabba palace scenes involved 42 extras, 18 principal cast members, 10 puppeteers, 9 mime artists and 90 crew members. That is quite a lot. In total, it took a month to film. What didn't help was the many wardrobe malfunctions with Leia's slave outfit. Sexy slave outfit. Fact 27. The huge Jabba puppet was created by Stuart Freeborn, who made the Yoda one also. It required a puppeteer to control the right arm and jaw, another to manoeuvre the left hand, jaw, tongue and head movements. Both of them moved the body whilst a third person controlled the tail. Outside the puppet, 1 or 2 people were on radio controllers to move the eyes, someone was placed under the stage to blow cigar smoke up a tube, and finally, a person worked bellows for Jabba's lungs. Fact 28. The Sarlacc pit scene was planned a year in advance. Jabba's sail barge, which was built by the film production crew, was 65 metres long and 24 metres high. Such a massive structure took nearly 100 labourers 4 months to construct. Fact 29. Fans waited years to see Darth Vader's face. When that time came, it was not David Prowse we saw, but British stage actor Sebastian Shaw. Shaw was not the first choice for this role. Lucas originally wanted a well-known movie star like Laurence Olivier or John Gielgud, but ultimately they felt that a not-so-famous actor would be best to make Vader's face not associated with someone well-known. So somewhat insultingly, Shaw was offered the role. I'm sure Prowse would have described not being offered the role as racist. Fact 30. In one draft of Return of the Jedi, Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi were going to leave the Force and return once more to their physical bodies. This was to either help Luke defeat Vader and the Emperor, or to join in the Endor celebrations. Fact 31. George Lucas began writing the first film in a new Star Wars trilogy in 1994. It was titled The Beginning, and remained unchanged until the new title of The Phantom Menace was revealed. So that the movie wouldn't be pirated, it was shipped to theatres with the name The Dollhouse. Fact 32. The waterfalls that surround feed Naboo's capital city were actually salt. Fact 33. The double-bladed lightsaber Darth Maul uses was a design taken from the comic book series Tales of the Jedi, The Sith War. That's unacceptable. The comic book creator should have sued George. Oh, wait a minute. Fact 34. When Warwick Davis was 11 years old, he played the Ewok Wicket in Episode 6, which was his first movie role ever. He returned in The Phantom Menace, where he played not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 characters. They were Wald, a pod racer spectator named Weasel, a street trader, and finally he doubled for Yoda in the background of one scene in the movie. Fact 35. Hayden Christensen apparently landed the role of Anakin Skywalker in Attack of the Clones because he looked good next to Natalie Portman, who was playing Padme. I guess Paul Walker, Colin Hanks, Ryan Phillippe and Jonathan Brandis did not look quite as good alongside Portman as they all auditioned for the role. Fact 36. Just like Episode 1, Episode 2 was shipped to theatres under a completely different name. It was called Cue Ball. Fact 37. The members of NSYNC made an appearance in the film specifically for Lucas's daughter's entertainment. However, the scene was cut from the final version. Fact 38. When Obi-Wan visits the Jedi archives to try and find Camino, we see busts in the background of presumably famous Jedi Masters, but they were actually members of Lucasfilm staff, which included George Lucas, the animation director Rob Coleman, and John Knoll, the visual effects supervisor. Fact 39. Now we know that with Lucas being Jewish, he often linked Nazi Germany things with Star Wars, for example the name for stormtroopers, and Vader's helmet being designed from a German soldier's helmet. Well, the Senate in Attack of the Clones votes to give the Supreme Chancellor emergency powers to go to war with the Separatists, which mirrored when Hitler used the same tactic to gain power in the mid-1930s. Fact 40. Revenge of the Sith was named The Bridge when it was dispatched to theatres. Fact 41. The start of Episode 3 was originally going to show 7 different battles on 7 different planets, with the likes of Yoda, Mace Windu and Obi-Wan leading clone troopers into conflict. Ultimately, of course, it was scrapped, but we did get to see what it may have looked like with the Order 66 sequence. Fact 42. 10-year-old Han Solo character designs were made for the movie. The young Han was supposed to appear in at least 2 scenes. One was him being raised by Chewbacca on Kashyyyk, and the other had him help Yoda in finding the location of General Grievous. Fact 43. Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader met 6 of the 9 requirements for borderline personality disorder, which is actually one more than what is needed for diagnosis. Fact 44. Lucas originally wanted to use stock footage and CGI to have Grand Moff Tarkin in the 3rd prequel, using these techniques because Peter Cushing sadly passed away some years before. However, the footage of Cushing was deemed unusable, and so the plan had to be scrapped. Tarkin still appeared in the film though, as actor Wayne Pygram was cast in the role. He was given prosthetics to make him look rather like Cushing, and he can be seen near the end of Episode 3 discussing the Death Star's construction with Vader and Palpatine. Fact 45. John Williams won an Oscar for the Star Wars soundtrack. Later, the American Film Institute named it the greatest film score of all time. Fact 46. George Lucas was a big admirer of Stanley Kubrick, who directed 2001: A Space Odyssey. When Lucas set out to make Star Wars, he hired so many people who worked on Kubrick's film that the group was referred to as the Class of 2001. Fact 47. Because Boba Fett's face is always covered in the original trilogy, everyone thinks that we don't see his face. Well, we kind of do. The actor who played Fett, Jeremy Bulloch, stood in for an Imperial officer named Lieutenant Skekel. He was liked enough in his role that his character was expanded on in the expanded universe. He actually appears in Revenge of the Sith as well, playing the part of Alderaanian pilot Jeremoc Colton. Fact 48. Peter Mayhew has pretty much been a one-character actor his whole life. By that I mean he has only ever really played Chewbacca in his acting career. Revenge of the Sith marked his return to the big screen since Return of the Jedi. Between the two films and 22-year gap, the only other movie he'd done was the made-for-TV Dragon Ball GT: A Hero's Legacy, and even then he had a voiceover role. Fact 49. Back to the Jabba puppet again. Don't worry, this is the last fact about it, until probably part 2. Anyway, it was the largest and most complex ever made for a film. The puppet took 3 months to build and weighed over 2,000 pounds, plus it cost nearly $500,000 to create. Fact 50. The final fact for today. Niue or Niue is an island nation that accepts collectible Star Wars coins. That loaf of bread will be 4 credits, please. Let me know what your favourite fact was by leaving a comment down below, and if you have any topic suggestions for 50 facts, then let me know. For more Star Wars facts, click on the playlist for the fact series I made a while back, or the video which is part 2 to this one. Thanks for watching, and remember to always keep it locked here to the Kankazans.